Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mitchell with FF Real Talk, and today we're gonna get right into the free agent video and waiver wire edition video because there's nothing to react to. Um, the reason why is one, and I don't really have time to do the video today because I want to get this out here for y'all, but there's nothing really to respond and react to. What we just saw was the most injury-riddled weekend I've ever seen in football. I can't remember a weekend more plagued with injuries across the board for dependable people, the players that you're counting on to play. And nothing's more frustrating. See, that's bad enough, but nothing's more frustrating. I'm sure you all went through this. Players that you were told are going to be out, like Jeffrey and in particularly Brandon Marshall, that you benched and for safety, and he goes out and scores 3 touchdowns. That killed me in 3 leagues. I suffered bad this week. I went 3 wins and 7 losses. It was this week. I mean, I happen to have on every team, I happen to have at least 3 players of this conglomerate of bad luck or misfortune, whether it was RG3, whether it was AJ Green, whether it was Doug Martin not playing and not having Bobby Rainey, obviously, whether it was Jamal Charles in 4 leagues I have. It was just brutal. I mean, this happens, but I've never seen it happen this bad. And it made for, I stopped looking at the fantasy cast. It was no need because I knew I was going to lose just about everything. So this was a really, really, really bad week. But be that as it may, the same thing goes for what I've been saying in a lot of my videos prior. You can't predict injury. It's the one of the main things you can't control. You start the best lineup you can, no matter what, in a given week. Some of it's based on matchup, but most of it's going to be based on talent and the fact that they were the people you drafted them to be. That's the best you can do. And you're going to have situations that you can't control. All you control is who you drafted and who you set up. So just you got to stick to the plan, and hopefully you've got enough people that's movable on your bench to make adjustments this week. And it's a few waiver pickups that's worth it out there. So we'll get right to that actually. The number 1 pickup of the week, I think it goes without saying for me because I watched the game. Ahmad Bradshaw. Because of the role in Indianapolis, and they really since last year have wanted to run the ball. And Trent Richardson, although I ain't gonna lie, he looked pretty good, minus the couple fumbles or whatever. He looked pretty good the other night. He was solid. He looked like he had some bursts. He got through a few things. He ran a couple of plays that was boneheaded, and of course, like I said, the fumbles. But he looked pretty good. But Ahmad Bradshaw looked like a monster out there. It looked like, I mean, he was being sprung from a slingshot every time he ran. I mean, there was no way they could contain him. He looked like he was in his first few years with the Giants. I tell you, I hadn't seen anything like that in quite a while. And he only had 13 carries. But where he was crazy was with his 5 catches for 2 reception touchdowns. I mean, every time he did run, he just looked nuts. So I'm thinking if they decide to take the L on Trent Richardson and kind of let that slide, they're going to be straight with the run game if they go to Ahmad Bradshaw. But it's going to take them swallowing their pride to do it and say that they lost with that trade. But we'll see. I think if they want the best chance to win, they need to be playing Ahmad Bradshaw much more. And regardless, though, it's clear that he's got a carved out role and he's going to be effective in terms of fantasy. So I think he's by far the number 1 pickup, and he's only 24% owned in leagues. So he's out there in most of the leagues. Second pickup, Knile Davis. He's owned, and by the way, from now on, when I say pickups, it's going to be everyone 70% owned or less. And in the case of Knile Davis, he's 65% owned. He had 22 carries for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. The thing about Knile Davis, the reason why he's a must pick up for any Jamaal Charles owner or anybody who wants to pick up somebody who maybe can do some maneuvering. If you pick him up first, try to, kind of box the Jamaal Charles owner in with, force him to trade something that you could use for Knile Davis. It's proof that Kansas City, the Chiefs, they want to run the ball. It is 100% proof they want to run the ball. That's why I know Jamaal Charles is much more hurt than they're leading on. Somebody had asked me on Twitter Sunday about dropping Matt Asiata, and I said I'd rather have Knile Davis, than him. And the guy was like, but wait a minute, Charles, he might not be hurt for long or whatever. This is my thing. It's not about the fact that he didn't play this week. I think Jamaal Charles is much more hurt than what happened this past week. I'm saying from whatever he did with that moving in the offseason, he's still hurt from that, because the 6 carries that he got in week 1 compared to the 22 Knile Davis got, that's proof that there is something wrong that they're not letting out with Jamaal Charles. I see Knile Davis taking over this thing for a bulk of this season because Jamaal Charles is much more hurt. If you pick him up, I truly think it's going to be an investment based on that huge usage and not usage of Charles in the week 1. So if you got him, get him. And if you're a Charles owner and you got the chance, you definitely need to get him. Number 3, very similar situation to Knile Davis, Bobby Rainey. 22 carries, just like Knile Davis, and ran for 144 yards. He looked terrific all over the field. Burst, power, and Doug Martin is just like this Jamaal Charles thing. But then there's this other element about what makes Bobby Rainey possibly as valuable as Knile Davis or more. When Charles is healthy, he's at least good. Right now, I'm getting to the point where I don't necessarily believe Doug Martin's a good running back. The times that he did run in week 1, he looked awful. And he's hurt now. I don't know if they're going to try to rush him back. I don't even know if they trust him. I think they're going to give Bobby Rainey the reins, so to speak, to get things going. He's only owned in 7% of leagues. You got a good opportunity to get him. And I really don't know. They're supposed to be playing Thursday. So I really don't know if Doug Martin is going to be out there. Bobby Rainey will be a great spot ad in a flex position this week, and you can do much worse in flex. Because I believe regardless if they try to put Doug Martin out there, Bobby Rainey is going to get the bulk of the work this week. Number 4, for anybody with tight end needs, the next 2 options on here are going to be good for you, because tight end's a real hard position to own because you never know who's going to blow up and they let you down often. But so far, the number 4 selection, Delanie Walker, who's 70% owned, he is really doing what most tight ends don't do. He's getting bulk work. 2 straight weeks of scoring, and he got 10 targets this past week. Jake Locker is aiming for this dude. I mean, and the thing about it is, right now, the Tennessee receivers are kind of letting us down. A lot of people were hanging a lot on Justin Hunter. He hasn't done it yet, hadn't shown much yet. But Jake Locker is using his safety valve, and Delanie Walker is getting things going. He's a big target, and he's getting a lot of targets. And I have no reason to believe that this won't continue across the board. A lot of people hyped him up in the preseason, and it's looking like he's going to pay dividends for the people who picked him up. It's at that point, that crucial point now, where this is about your last chance to be able to get him. With 30% left out there on the board, by the end of the week, I'm expecting him to be 90% or more owned. So if you're looking for tight end help or looking to replace certain tight ends that haven't been performing you, which are a lot of them, Delanie Walker will be a good selection this week. And the number 5 option will surprise many. Antonio Gates, only 54% owned. Off reputation, he's generally majority owned. But the last couple of years have been lean, and everybody's knowing that it's coming to the end of the run. So he's kind of been passed over. But the other night, he had a renaissance game. 2 straight weeks with 8 or more catches, and this past week, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he looks new, reinvigorated, and with Keenan Allen still trying to get going and get into a groove, and Ladarius Green being no part of the offense, no threat, I don't see any way that this doesn't keep up. So Phillip Rivers has trusted him for years and years and years. And Antonio Gates, though he's injury prone, you got to use him when you can. And again, it's a lot of tight end deficiencies out there. This is a good time to try to pounce on somebody who's half available in leagues. It'd be a good opportunity to get him. Number 6 option was one of my guys last week, and it's time. It's time. He's only 50% owned, Andrew Hawkins of the Browns. If you saw that game, you saw that Brian Hoyer is looking for him almost exclusively. He had six catches for 70 yards, and he was 4th in the NFL this week with 12 targets. And with, again, I said it last week, with Jordan Cameron out, he's the guy. Miles Austin looked good too, and that one touchdown he had, it's something about the way he cut on that play that was like, oh man, you know, with your hamstring usually where it is, that play looked good for Miles Austin. But right here, the guy here is Andrew Hawkins, small or whatever. But Brian Hoyer likes him, and Andrew Hawkins is really, really, really a nice piece to add because it looks like he's going to be dependable. Because the Browns as a whole look like a much better team than everyone expected, and particularly on defense. But this is a great. I'm trying to pick up Andrew Hawkins in a few leagues, and you should do the same. Like I said, 15% owned is a great addition. And the next one is another wide receiver I mentioned last week. No one really pounced on it because he's still only 3% owned. Brian Quick, another great week. 9 targets, 7 catches for 74 yards. It doesn't matter if it's Austin Davis. It doesn't matter if it's Sean Hill. They're looking for him out there. He had a big camp, he had a big preseason, and it's finally starting to trickle from preseason to actual season for Brian Quick. This looks like it's going to be his year. You don't have to worry about any of the other pass options out there. All of that. No, none of it doesn't matter. Brian Quick looks like he's going to, I tell you what, after this week and maybe week 4 or whatever, if this holds true, people are going to wish they picked him up because he's looking like the sneakiest change of pace type receiver out there. And really, I think he's being really, really overlooked because of his reputation for underperforming. But again, late pickup, be a good one to have. Number 8, Markus Wheaton. I mentioned him last week. He went up a little bit, 27% available. Again, a lot of people are running from him because what fantasy often is gaudy numbers being what make people pounce in free agency and waivers. He doesn't have those, but his targets is what it's about. I told you before, targets is what it matters with running receivers, and touches is what matters with running backs, meaning carries and receptions. Markus Wheaton got 8 targets, and it's over and over. I'm telling you, Ben Roethlisberger is looking for him, and when you get as many targets as he has, they're gonna result in catches, and they're ultimately gonna result in touchdowns. Somebody's got to get them. Antonio Brown can't always. I'm telling you, Markus Wheaton is a guy that at the end of the season, I really believe that his number is, his value will be highly, highly regarded as something that anybody who took the chance to take him early, like around now, or drop certain people that's not performing for him, I think it'll pay off. And like I say, some of this isn't about the fact that he hadn't got 2 touchdowns yet or got any or whatever have you. It's about who's looking for him, and they're obviously looking for him there. Number 9 is one that scared me from the moment this news broke because I don't like the player, but the situation, makes for something. Matt Asiata, 12% owned. He spiked up because of the Adrian Peterson thing coming out before the weekend started. Once it came out news that Adrian Peterson was going to play in week 2, A lot of people thinking, well, got to drop Matt Asiata. Well, I'm going to be dropping him because I'm trying to get some of these guys I'm mentioning this ahead of him. But the truth of the matter is I don't necessarily need to, because I don't care what the Vikings have said about Adrian Peterson, whether they're reinstating him or not. I believe sooner than later, sooner rather, and the focus being on sooner, Adrian Peterson's going to be deactivated by the league. And if that happens, it's going to go back to Matt Asiata. Now, the reason I don't like him, whether he's the main back or not, is because he's slow, because he isn't a good running back, period. The one play he had that was good was off a nice reception or whatever, but he is not a good running back. But when you're the number one running back in a system, it's the old adage is you got to give him a look because he's the one. Well, in that case, he made a touchdown last week, and you could do worse, I guess. But I have no confidence in owning him and feeling comfortable playing him. But because of this Adrian Peterson thing being generally fluid, it's not static, and it's not something that we know. I really believe he will have some value. So it's not a bad idea if you hold on to him. But if you put in a waiver claim for any of those other running backs I got at the top, like Bradshaw, Davis, or Rainey, I'd much rather have them than Matt Asiata. But if you can't get them, it's okay to hold on, because I believe this Adrian Peterson thing, if you have him out there in your league, he's going to be on your benches again sooner rather than later. And my number 10 selection is, ironically, who I had number 1 last week, Josh Gordon, and he was at 13% owned. The reason he's down this far is because, like my ranking of him number 10 on here, he has 10 weeks that he's suspended. He's not going to be able to come back till week 12. And in November, just around the time before the fantasy playoffs start. If you hold him, you're being presumptuous, thinking that, hey, I'm about to get into the playoffs where I can use him. If you're not doing good, he's not going to do you any good. If you come week 8 and you're in a losing, you're at the point where you're not going to make the playoffs, it'd be a waste to have him. But for anyone else out there, you've got players out there on your waiver, or on your bench rather, that you're not using and probably won't use until bye-week fill-ins or situations to where worse come to worse. Josh Gordon is that one type of guy that he's so talented and will probably bring such ruckus when he does get the chance to play, when he does go in or whatever, that he can make the difference in that game that he starts, the first one, throughout your playoffs if you make it, because you're bringing in the quality of a number 1 receiver, into the fold at the end of the season when you need him most, especially if you're a playoff contender. It may be worth your while, and I know it's hard because I've got to scroll between I picked him up in a lot of leagues. I'm not going to be able to hold him in every one I picked him up in. So you're going to have to juggle between, is it worth holding or is it not? But in a lot of cases, it is worth that. It is worth that last slot. Because you're not going to be using a lot of your players on bench depth most of the year in worst case scenarios. So you got a spot to where Josh Gordon can be valuable, especially if you're a contender. I highly recommend that you consider having them in, especially if you know you got one of those teams that's got this fully loaded above the top and you got the room for it. If you're weak out there and you know so many players are hurt that you're trying to get players that can play now, forget it. It's not going to be worth it. But if you're loaded and you know you can spare the spot, or you got some extra tight end or maybe a weak extra quarterback or whatever, and you're in a 10 or 12 team league, drop him for Gordon. You wouldn't be, it won't hurt you. It may very much save you. And just an honorable mention, and the reason I say honorable mention is the last time I'm going to mention it. Brandon Cooks is 60% owned. A lot of people are having, they're having some trepidation about getting him, I'm assuming, because he hasn't, put in these gaudy numbers that a lot of people were expecting or hoping, and particularly last week. But right now, that's a function of the New Orleans offense. They're not looking as good as we expected, and particularly anybody who drafted Drew Brees like I have in several leagues. He's killing me right now. But I'm telling you, he's still going to be an active participant in this offense. With Kenny Stills back, it takes some of his value away, but Brandon Cooks is still a solid own, and he's 40% available. This is pretty much the last time I'm going to mention him. If y'all want to get him, get him. If not, you know what I'm saying? We'll see how he plays the rest of the season. And it's one position, and I'm going to have one name for each position on the watch list to look at going forward. At wide receiver, Miles Austin. Just mentioned him, 2% owned, 6 catches for 44 yards with a touchdown, got 10 targets last week. Somebody else has to get the looks besides Andrew Hawkins. And like I said, Miles Austin was surprisingly sharp and looked pretty good the other week. The Browns look better than I thought, so he might be somebody to look at. At tight end, Niles Paul. With the Redskins situation being as in flux as it is because of the RG3 loss, and we don't know how long it's going to be or whatever. And Niles Paul's had 14 targets in 2 games, more than 80 yards a game. And with Jordan Reed out, it's going to be weird. It's going to be somebody's got to do it. And Niles Paul is looking really solid out there, and he's going to be a great safety valve for Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins is the one that's going to end up staying in the fold at quarterback. It's a great pickup. It's looking like he's only 1% on. So keep a look at, or even worth picking up Niles Paul if you have tight end issues and can't get Walker or Gates. I said it last week as a watch. Isaiah Crowell. He still hasn't done a lot in terms of usage so far, but the way he runs impresses me so much. It's so violent and so quick, and he looks to hit. It's just hopefully he doesn't get hurt with that style because he's a small guy, but I'm telling you, he's going to be somebody we're going to be talking about later. I probably won't be very soon, but later on, I'm telling you, you're going to be speaking their name. But watch as the weeks continue to see how he goes. He's only 3% on. Quarterback one is obvious. Kirk Cousins, he's now 8% on. Everyone's saying the whole thing about what the Redskins and even the whole apparent thing that the Patriots or whatever said that Kirk Cousins is a better fit for this Jay Gruden offense. We're going to find that out. He looked real good Sunday. So if you have deficiencies at quarterback and you don't really like some of the options you've been playing with, I think Kirk Cousins is going to thrive while RG3's out. It looks like they're going to try to rush him back, which makes no sense. But Kirk Cousins got a job he's trying to play for. But he's got a tough schedule up ahead. Very soon he's going to be facing Seattle, Arizona, and Tennessee in the coming weeks. So it's going to be tough sledding. But again, I think he's going to thrive in this offense, and he's fighting for a job. So you can do worse as a quarterback ad with Cousins. And the last one is defense. The Texans are 60% owned, so they're available in 40% of leagues. They got a good schedule the next 2 weeks against the Giants and the Bills. The Texans, what did they score? 8 points the first week. And my whole thing about defense is, you know how you always start with 10 points and you count down or go up? You want to try to see if you can break even to get that 10 points. That's a successful week at defense to me. They had 8 the first, and then last week they had, 20 or 20-something or whatever? The Texans are looking really good as a defense. And I was thinking with losing Jadeveon, it might take a little dip, but they were good before him, and they're going to be fine without him. So if you're looking for a defense, pick them up. They're 40% out there. So yep, that's my waiver additions for week 2. For coming up for week 3, and I'm just hoping we have a better week in week 3 than we had this past week. I hope we never see anything like that again. And be sure to follow me on Twitter. I've been getting a lot of activity, and the response of all of this is growing. It's quite exciting when I get people asking me when's the video, this, that, or the other advice. It gets me going. I do this for y'all, and y'all's input and thoughts and participation is what keeps me going. So, You know, like I say, follow me on Twitter at FF Real Talk, and subscribe to the channel here. And, you know, any questions you can post there, or better, like I always say, better to ask, follow me on Twitter and ask me there at FF Real Talk any of your questions. So, you know, until next time, we'll see you, and good luck next week. This week, rather. All right. Have a good one.